would make more than what the jail would.
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah.
Rusty, have you been following this thing in the news about this Jeff Gannon in Washington? And
I don't watch news very much of anything, but as for Jeff Gannon, the people who think it's Johnny Gosh, I don't believe you're very far off.
You think it's right?
I do.
Okay.
And if you don't believe me, look at his eyes.
Yep.
Look very closely at the eyes, and for what I know firsthand, there was some things said last time I seen Johnny.
Yeah.
That it was basically put. This was out at the farmers market in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, wouldn't it be funny if? And he basically laid out the exact same scenario as what happened.
And what's going on now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like he said, he had the ways and means to get in to do it.
Boy.
And, how many people could get in to the White House on press credentials like he had?
Yeah, but he had 200 times he got in there and he didn't even sign in.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's just like Larry King going into Offutt Air Force Base, or to SAC, I mean. That's Strategic Air Command.
Right.
And, most people, they stop them at the guard shack and they check them out and this and that and the next thing. And Larry would drive straight through with whoever he had in the car. It didn't matter.
And they never stopped him?
No. Never when I was with him.
Unbelievable.
How many times were you in and out of Offutt?
I don't even know.
How many?
It was a few times.
Yeah.
This is basically what they would induct people into the MK Ultra project.
That's where the training was. Huh?
Yeah.
That was the training?
The mind control.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
who would they take in? Are these kids they kidnapped off the street?
Basically, that's who they would take in.
Wow.
And, they would run them through the paces.
Yeah.
And split their personalities to where they'd hear a certain tone or a certain phrase or whatever, a certain person's voice, and they'd totally change personality.
Did you see much of that go on at Offutt, Rusty?
I've seen some of it. I've seen more of the fallout from it.
Yeah.
Paul Benashi, what is it? He got 13 different personalities, isn't it, Ted?
Yeah, at least. Probably more.
Wow.
Yeah. And, that's the things that I'd seen.
Yeah.
Like these kids, I didn't get a chance to really talk or get to know a lot of them. Much more than acquaintances. And you didn't dare have anything more than acquaintances when you were around Larry.
Jeez, unbelievable.
He watched you like a hawk, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about the conversation on the airplane.
Oh. Larry King had a daycare center that was his little pet project in Omaha.
Jeez.
It was basically to take in orphan kids or, kids that don't have a place to go.
It's the fox in the hen house.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the guy who owned the building got wind that what Larry was doing. And he went in and boarded up the place, locked it up, said, "You're not getting in, period."
Wow.
Well, they called the sheriff, the police, and all these different state patrol, and nobody wanted to touch it. Well, we were on a jet, and I was sitting right next to Larry. He called Ronald Reagan direct. The place was open in 20 minutes.
Is that right? My gosh.
How do you know it's Ronnie Reagan?
Because I listened to the phone conversation through he had the receiver next to his ear next to me. and I could hear the voice.
What was that, in 88?
Yeah, that would have been, I believe, in 88.
Do you think Ronnie Reagan knew what he was all about?
Oh, yes, he knew.
Okay.
I know firsthand that he knew.
Okay.
How about the Bushes? Would you comment on that?
They know firsthand.
Okay.
They've participated, both father and son.
Yeah.
Rusty, tell the audience about when you returned to the old farmhouse after the FBI found out that you had been there and you left. Tell us about what happened to the farmhouse.
Oh, they just devastated the farmhouse. This farm was a show place in the neighborhood. It was my grandparents' farm, and Grandpa painted the buildings, kept everything in just pristine shape every year. And anyway, the house was kept immaculate. And I'd left the house, locked the door, and it was completely livable when I left, because I would pop back in and stay for a few days or whatever, and just kind of have somewhere where I could get some sense of having a home. And anyway, when I was in jail, I called home and told my brothers that I had some of these things hidden in the house.
This is in Portland.
I was in Portland, in Multnomah County Jail.
Yeah.
And anyway, I called back to Nebraska and told brothers I had the stuff hidden in the house. And they lived down by Kansas, and they drove all the way up here. It took them about 3 or 4 hours just to drive up. And the night that it was a snowstorm, blizzard, and they still came up. And
you talking about pictures in the house.
Yeah. When they got there, there were fresh tracks, and the house had been just totally demolished. All the appliances had been shot up. They found military shell casings in the house.
My gosh.
And they called the sheriff, and the sheriff came over, and oh yeah, it's just kids partying in there. But they were military shell casings.
Yeah.
And brother kept a couple of them and had them traced down, find out that's where they came from. And they'd taken sledgehammer and beat the walls in. They busted up my desk. I had a set of pictures in my desk taped to the top of the drawer.
Didn't you tell your brothers that when you called them to go under the top of the drawer of the desk? Okay.
And they found them all.
So anyway, they'd been in and they had ransacked the whole place, and they'd gotten what was hidden there.
So
they knew where to go under the top of the desk.
And they were listening to your phone call in prison.
Oh yeah, in jail, all phone conversations are recorded. All your letters are photocopied.
Wow.
And kept in a file, and they go through them. And
oh, gosh.
My brother's phones were tapped. He had found bugs on his phones in his office.
Well, it's a neat government we have, I'll tell you that.
There's another area here I'd like to ask Rusty about, and that was Gary Caradori. Tell us about Gary Caradori.
Gary Caradori was the state's investigator, I believe. That was what his title was, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, he's a former Nebraska Highway Patrolman who was the state investigator for the committee that was investigating the Franklin cover-up.
Right.
Yeah.
State committee.
And so anyway, he finally tracked me down. My mom had got word to me that I really needed to talk to him, and that he'd get it set up to where, all things would be taken care of, and I'd go have a life, and, settle down. I've never been able to get a family, get married or anything, and so